Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining the Leadership with Heart podcast. It's Heather, and I am joined today by Sarah Mazzocco. And if you could see the spelling of that name, you'd be like, now, wait, what? How you say that again? Beautiful human, though. So I met Sarah because she was part of the group that brought me in for a speaking engagement with the Americare Senior
Senior
Care.
living.
That's probably
Senior
how I
living.
should say that.
Yeah, yeah, there you go.
Uh,
Americare
and
Senior Living. There you go.
Senior Living. Thank you very much.
You got it.
And it was just awesome to meet her and the team. It was so fun to be there, and I just felt blessed. And so we were talking after the fact, I was like, "Oh my gosh, it'd be so good to have you on there." And that is because Sarah is bringing just so much head and heart to the
Mhm.
organization and process and consistency that I think will help with culture transformation. And so, yeah, I'm just excited to have you on. So, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. We were really fortunate to have Heather brought to our attention as a speaker, and she was our keynote at our annual leadership conference. And I just really felt she resonated with our belong, grow, serve focus. And yeah, just super thankful to have the opportunity to meet you and continue our conversations.
Yay. Well, okay, so tell everybody like we know kind of the organization, but just where are you right now in your leadership journey? Kind of what's your role there, and then just what do you think, where do you think you're at as a leader?
Well, yeah, so I've been in leadership roles for around 20 years now in the people space. I've gradually kind of grown up into different parts and pieces in the people functions. My heart and core, though everyone has that, right, is truly talent development and organizational development. That is really where I was able to hone my skills and then gradually again move into other parts of just the people function as a system, right? The system of work. So where I am today, I'm with Americare Senior Living. I'm their chief people officer, and I've been with the company about 2 years. Prior to joining, I had been in just several different industries, which is actually why Americare wanted me to join them because they wanted the diversity of my experience. I've worked in retail for quite some time. I worked at Walmart at their home office in the talent development space, HEB, so that's in Texas, if you're not familiar, and in Mexico. And so I've worked with diverse populations and then had moved on into really the financial services industry. I was in insurance and in also financial advisory services for a little bit. So beyond that, I'd done some consulting. So again, I just bring a wide variety of experiences. And I think that really has shaped, it's been a big part of my point of view as a leader and where I am today. Getting to serve that many different audiences and populations really, I think it just helps you connect with the human experience a little bit differently because when you're talking about financial advisory as an example, our financial advisors when I was with that company, they really focused on growing generational wealth, right? And that's a very different audience to support and grow from a people perspective than a frontline cashier at Walmart, right?
Hmm.
They have very different needs, very different experiences, and how you serve and grow them is looks very different. So, I think through those experiences, really deeply working to understand what their needs are and doing my best to serve them, that has really shaped the way I lead and the leader I am today, which is a very curious leader, I would say. I really honestly, Heather, thought that by the time I got to this point in my leadership journey and just as a person, that I would have arrived. But it's such a fake, false premise to even start with, right? But I think you just have this idea in your head that, what your life's going to look like and where you're going to be. And I have so much more to learn, so much more to learn. But that's what keeps me doing what I do, right? So, yeah, I think that as a leader, my focus is really to be curious and to serve others. And that's my heart, but I also am clear that I don't know it all. And that's the curious part of where I am today. And thankfully I have an amazing team around me to help me solve.
I love it. One of the things that I mean, obviously work with lots of groups, and I do all the pre-planning. I'm talking, and the thing that really stood out most with my work with you in the beginning before I even came on was your focus on process. Which even though I said even before I started recording, I said that I tend to be a person who, like, while I do my work and I know my stuff, I tend to be iterative, and I don't have a problem with, like, oops, got to change something like quickly. Like I'm a person who will initiate it or I'll take it in if it happens. I just have to, I'm just, oops. And I don't, it doesn't cause me as much stress when that stuff's happening because I'm just like, okay, it's an opportunity to learn. Okay, maybe I'm supposed to be called to a different level, whatever it is. So as I'm sitting there in front of you and you're like, and here's the process and we're this, and that, and I'm like, this person's like a spitting image. This is exactly how I like would go, like how I would go about things in there. And at the same time, sometimes you have to have that space for like the process or the plan doesn't go exactly how that is. Like, do you have, I don't know, is you have a story or can you think about even like maybe some times when that's happened with you where you wanted, you felt really good because you're putting a infrastructure and a framework and you're putting this in there and because it's like your love language in a way. And then all of a sudden, like either someone didn't adopt it, someone didn't like it, you hit a wall with it and you're like, wait a second. And you had to live in a different space for a while. Like what was going on? Do you have any examples on that?
I think it's funny you say that because I am pretty structured, and it's typically what has in my career, I have been asked to join organizations that want to transform something or, improve it vastly or just rethink things. And, it's funny that you say all of that because I do bring a lot of structure. But what I also say is I reserve the right to change my mind with new information, which a lot of people
Nice.
don't necessarily love that because it means that I might come back and be like, I was wrong. I heard from this person and they said that this was their perspective and we need to stop, pause and assess and deep dive and make some adjustments. And so I that is but that's also why I try to do a lot of due diligence on the work that I do. Trying to think of an example of when that took place. I think from a design perspective, just I'll give an example, an employee portal that we were working on in my past life. We really thought we were on the right path and we're creating something that was going to be super usable to our frontline staff. And, whether I think whether or not anyone means to do it, when you work on something, it becomes your baby. And I think something for me that I've had to over time really work on is, and not and I thankfully this was earlier in my career that I figured this out, but is that pride and ownership of you've got to set that aside to get the best solutions, right? And just
Mhm.
intake that feedback. So in that situation, kind of considering that, going back to this example, we really felt like we had all of these high value resources and ways that we're going to connect our employees to their career paths. And we presented this design, it was for a very large company, and they weren't as enamored with it as we expected. And the things that we thought were high value were high value from a higher level professional perspective, but not the individuals doing the work. And so it meant a lot of, quite frankly, a lot of rework. And we had to go back. But again, it's just one of those situations when you get the right people in the room, that's why you ask for feedback. And we didn't deploy it until we made those changes. But the efficacy of it was they felt like it was them.
Mm,
It was more valuable than it would have been if not for getting that feedback. So, but that's why the curiosity for me, just going through some of those situations, over time,
yes.
that's why I don't like moving until I have enough information. And I think you've
Mm,
got to get the employee voice. You've got to get benchmarking to know where you stand against the competition, and then really look at what you want to move on. Like, what do you actually want to do based on all of that? There are constraints we have, right? Time, money, and resources. So, how do we make those decisions and make sure that we're making the best decisions we can with what's available?
mm.
Um,
I love it. What I love is the combination, and I do think it's you are more unique than you think, probably. Like you probably don't realize how there's very few people who can operate in that space or say like, okay, yes, I put my process together. I'm kind of in love with it. I think it's going to be pretty hot, right? Like it's going to be a nice process. And then all of a sudden something stops and most people just immediately get in the defensive zone. They start to get like victim oriented. There's like all these things. And I'm not saying we like you're never there or you never get like, oh, woe is me. We put all this work in. I'm not sure. But maybe, the idea that you balance it with that curiosity. So you have the data, the curiosity, the constant feedback loops, learning that's inserted. I feel like it is the curiosity, the desire to include more people's voices before changes are made,
Yeah.
particularly when you have a view of design and transformation before making that move. And then then it makes it where it's not as frustrating, partly because you've done a lot of work to get there. But sometimes, like if you didn't do all the work, like this is before, now you probably do even more work. Do you think that was a byproduct of it actually? So based on that thing, do you think a byproduct was making you do more, get more feedback, do more intelligence before taking action?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, again, when my master's is actually in educational technology. And so it looks at training, design, and development. My undergrad was in education. And so I come by that naturally, right? Really trying to understand how people can best learn and receive information, right? So you have to be curious to do that work, right? Because as a instructional designer, which is what I started out as, your job was to learn other people's job. And so, you really, if to do that effectively and design learning in an effective way, you have to be the question. And sometimes, quite frankly, people didn't want to answer the question because they didn't want, I mean, I will just tell you, I did PLE, powerlifting equipment, one of my first projects ever in my career. This will really crack you up, Heather. One of my first jobs in my career as an instructional designer, working at Walmart. I mean, this was when I started into retail. I had done a lot in leadership development prior to starting with Walmart. They recruited me there, and they sent me off to do scissor lifts to learn how to operate a scissor lift and design scissor lift training for the whole company for Walmart and Sam's Club in the US. So,
Wow.
of course, no experience doing that, but I was an instructional designer. You just need subject matter experts and you go, so of course I went to the back of one of our Walmart stores and was looking at the scissor lift and was realizing that they are not compliant with any of their safety standards with the scissor lift. And that, you learn how to navigate in those moments, because that part I had to kind of accept to be able to work with and learn from the individuals that actually did the work so that I could be
Mhm.
successful. So you just become, for you to really serve others, you have to understand them, you have to ask questions, you have to adjust what you believe right is so that you can serve them. And I think that the longer I have done this kind of work, regardless of which part of the people space, the more malleable I've been, to your point.
Mm. Mhm.
And I think it's kind of funny you say that, because in just reflecting on what you just said, the piece that I have noticed in the last few years is that I think, as I've worked with new and different people over time, I think that they have been surprised when they challenged me on something or brought something forward that I hadn't considered, that I was like, oh, that's a great point. We absolutely need to adjust for that, right? Because this isn't going to work if we don't. We need to stop. And so when they become surprised and thankful and happy that they're seen and that their opinions
Mhm.
valued and that we're making changes based on that, then you just accelerate, right? You don't
Mhm.
just accelerate that, you accelerate everything else that you're doing in partnership, because they trust that you're going to be open, right, to
Mhm.
that, and that it's not going to be an event.
Yes.
uh,
Yeah.
it doesn't need to be. It doesn't need to be, right? Because if you want to be successful, you've got to weigh all those things out. So, yeah,
I really like, so there's a couple things that keep coming up. One is surveying service. And the other one is questions, like, asking questions. And oftentimes people will be like, I was asking a lot of questions. I was showing curiosity, but there's like, it's also how you ask the questions.
right.
So like, are you asking the questions from a place of like, I always say it's like blank slate being. So it's like, I'm not coming with a presumed conclusion. I'm coming with an open, like the openness to be, like you said, be malleable, to be changed. And when I go into the interaction that way, people know it, they feel it, and it does create a sense of safety in the space, doesn't it? When they know, like, wow, like she's really putting it out there that she either doesn't know or she
Hmm.
thinks she might know, but that she's willing for that to be wrong. I mean,
Yeah.
whoever admits that, I mean, we never hardly even see that anymore. People just don't want to admit they're wrong. And I think those
Right.
best leaders that admit they're wrong, that create that, have this space of that safety. I mean, it creates a
Mhm.
safety that people want to be around and they want to continue to contribute to like more innovations or more transformation, right?
Right. Yeah, and I feel that that is where again you get the best work. That's so funny you say that about being right. I feel like that has been a topic that has just been circling me for quite some time. The importance of people being right, and I don't know if that's changed over time or I'm just changing as a leader and seeing that more. But that is really, I mean, that is that the conviction and wanting to be right is strong. Stronger, I believe it feels like today than ever before. And I don't know if that has to do with, is it a perception thing in my mind? Is it societal changes because we know all the data from Sherman and civility, right? The
Hmm.
number of instances people see that today. We can't deny that those things aren't affecting our workforce and how people show up on a day-to-day basis. Yeah, I don't know. Like, there's definitely I guess for me, it's more about getting to the right solution. And
Love
that
it.
solution may look different than what we imagined. And typically, if you're really digging deep to get the best thing, it is. So yeah, I don't know, but that is in our way. I absolutely
It
believe that.
is.
It's in our way and it's not helping.
Hmm.
So it almost from a leadership approach perspective and a stylistic perspective, it becomes more important that we are, in my opinion, malleable and able to flex with feedback, and take it as input.
Absolutely. I love that whole agility portion. I think agility is created through curiosity and it's created in the, like you said, the desire to land on the best solution for the whole, not just the either best solution for me or that I'm going to be right. And I think it's actually, by the way, it's a big problem in our world,
Yes.
the deep desire to be right. And I do think, and I said this before, even when I was speaking to your people, that there's like this desire inside of us that is innate for us to be heard and for our voices and our names to be remembered and for the legacy and all that stuff. It runs very deep. And so unfortunately, it could also drive us to behaviors that are counter to what we actually are trying to get to as far as strengthening relationships. We just break things down because we're constantly showing up with, but wait, I have some other thing to say that's smarter than you, or that's more important, or that has more data behind it, or whatever it is, instead of going, oh, that's like, even if you feel it, because I think we're all human. Again, it's innate. So we're all human, but it's like as we feel it, taking the pause to evaluate our motives, our intent as we're about to speak, and then like now saying the thing because we've taken that time, but more of us aren't doing that. So we just whatever it is, and it's just not. That's what's happening. It's in our world. So no surprise it would be in our workplaces too.
Right. Yeah, I think, and that's where, the other thing that I've been paying attention to when it comes to that is just, our leaders today, I really believe that they have a harder challenge ahead of them than ever before. I really do. And sometimes they just need to hear that because that whole everything that you just said is real and it shows up in our employees' behaviors, shows up in some of their behaviors, whether they realize it or not sometimes. You've got a lot of generational differences they're dealing with. You have, again, the societal sort of stresses and strains that come with incivility. And especially, when if you look at all the numbers, we know that if, every unemployed person went and got a job, we would still be over 2 million jobs that are open. And so, you start looking at the data and you start
Hmm.
playing out what's going on with people's behaviors. And the reason why I think our leaders are struggling to a certain point right now is because it is more complex.
Hmm.
It is
I agree.
harder. And what the employees want and need is different. And, and honestly, what they can command is different because they are more so now in the driver's seat than ever. So, for me, it's funny that being right is not where it's at because I'm so purpose driven. I mean, I shared with you
Mm-hmm.
before that I am all about changing the quality of our employees' lives through changing, their job experience, right? Like we work, you know, right or wrong, we work the most hours of our life, like that we work. And
Hmm.
if that can be better, then that's huge. So if they can feel more valued, feel like they are seen, heard, and belong when they're working, that's huge to me.
Hmm.
So I don't have to be right, right, to deliver on something. I want the solution, to be right to hit that goal. So yeah, so
Huge
I
difference.
huge difference, right? So
Hmm.
that's where you can kind of see some of those. Some I just bring that up because some of those behaviors get in the way when you're not purpose driven like that,
Hmm.
and not
Yeah, and we're all
and
human. Like so
exactly,
we're just gonna we can fall back to that kind of the human that human element which is great and messy, and it's all the things all at the same time. And
yeah.
then we can either accept there are those things and like accept the behaviors, or we can say, okay, I'm going to stop myself from doing the thing I know I'm about to do. That's not the thing that's going to serve the whole or be for the best or whatever. What I like about your approach is the like balanced, pragmatic way that you put it all together. So you're not highly emotional. Again, it's like tied to the again, your outcome would be success for the employees and making sure their experience is good. But that's the extent to which you have that purpose or your focus, right? How you get there, while you are a process oriented person, sometimes well, in a big way, you want to also you're flexible enough to say the process might change because the end goal is still making sure their experience is great. And so, but it's pragmatic and it's balanced. And I'm finding more value in this style as I get older, I think, because I would say in my 30s and 40s and leading people, I definitely was tied more towards emotion, even though I relied a lot on data. So like for me, it speaks my language when you talk about using data and like continuing to look back at the data. Data, it is a validation for me, but it became more and more that as I got older,
Yeah.
because it was like, number one, I realized the folks that were on the executive leadership team, and mostly I was mostly reporting to them. So I was at that level right below that team, and I started to realize that they were looking for that data, and that's how they validated their real world, like what the truth is for them, and how it connected to their strategic initiatives. And so then for me, I was always like, well, in order to be successful, I need to meet them where they're at, or I need to make sure I'm speaking in their language. And so I would always go and search for, what data points, what things are, and so even when I'm speaking to clients or working with clients, I'll do the same thing. I'll just be like, okay, well, like this, yes, this is that, and here's the process. But however, let's start from your data. Like the
Yeah.
data is like we got to get to that. We have to have that first. And so I learned again, it just is, I'd say that probably took in the last 15 years, I got much better at that.
So yeah, you just clicked me into something. I think I was really, really blessed to have the opportunity to have that experience at the point in my career I did. I was working at the University of Arkansas after I was in grad school, and I was at the Sam and Walton College of Business, and I was actually designing and developing executive education programs for vendors that worked for Walmart that came to Northwest Arkansas that were required to live there for 2 year stints. This is where they sent all the vendors like PepsiCo and Colgate Palmolive. They would send all their top of the top to go work with Walmart on site. And then they would go to these executive education programs that I was designing and developing with the top faculty at the Sam and Walton College of Business. So I was there. And then Walmart was sending their people as well. And they recruited me to go to Walmart. And I honestly love my job so much that I went to the dean. I was like, can you like compete with them on numbers? And he's like, Sarah, this is fortune number one. You need to go. And so like, okay, good point. Maybe I should do that. I was,
That's
good
so funny.
advice from the dean of the College of Business at the
Yes.
Salem Wall College of Business. So thankfully I did that. He was such a wonderful person, And I went, and the reason I bring that up is because I started out in that corporate environment, it was ingrained in me that you had to look at the people piece from the numbers. So I was one of the examples I would give you is doing new cashier training, right? At the time there were, and I have no idea what the numbers are today, there were 350,000 cashiers in Walmart. And the goal was to redesign cashier training and see if you could reduce the time to competency. Because think about every and then in doing so, measuring every single minute of time savings from a productivity perspective and a payroll perspective over
Wow.
350,000 people, right?
That's crazy.
So
Yes.
start running the numbers, right? So that was how I was brought into corporate America and looking at data from a people perspective. That's just lost productivity time, right?
Hmm.
That's not including the cost of the program and all of those things. You know, when you're at penny margins, you've got to get really, really good at that. So that's how I grew up in the business. And that's why I look at people analytics, I think probably differently,
Hmm.
and really do my best with the initiatives that we launch to really get clear on what are we trying to solve for, how are we going to measure, to your point, like looking for efficacy, right? So you can talk
Hmm.
about the before and after and the business impact, because it should all drive your business strategy, right? So I just share that with you because I think that's not normal to get that opportunity, right?
Yes.
And they called, and thankfully that dean said, go, Sarah. And I did. And wow, like that opened up my world, you know,
Yeah.
to a totally different way of thinking about people. And it just went from there with that foundation. So it's not lost on me that I've been blessed that way.
Oh, but like I said, it's easily seen by like me, and I'm like I've written the book on caring leadership. Like this is the work I do, and in the end, people often think like you can't be the person who looks at numbers. You can't be the person like I don't. They just think like soft is weak, soft is ineffective. I don't even know. In my mind, I'm like I can see that it can coexist in a person like you, right? And
Yeah.
for those who are listening, just know that like you can be this people analytics person. You can be a person who's process oriented, design oriented, system oriented, and still care. It's the same
Yeah.
thing, by the way. It's the same thing. Like if we don't know where we stand and we can't give people direction that's validated by something that is more concrete, and then we go in a different direction, it's the wrong direction, and they don't feel successful, we're not caring anyway. So caring is trying to be as close to the right landing on the right spots as you can by utilizing some data. And so I love the it's just a little bit of a unique viewer angle I think that you bring to this discussion. And when I met you and I saw how you were with it, I was like, oh, I've just got to have you. I want people to see that, to understand that you can be both things, and you don't have to. But you don't have to be the person that gives up. Like I heard somebody in the audience. It was some audience I can't remember, and they said, I said, well, what are some signs of an uncaring leader? And then someone would say, well, it's the person who's focusing on the numbers and they're looking at the efficiencies and that and that. But they're not looking at the people. And so, after she spoke on other people's book, I said, okay, and I'm going to come back to that. The reason why this is important to be here is as a caring leader, you should be looking at your numbers too. Like you have to get results. The whole end game is to have high performing teams that want to stay, that want to lean in for innovations and all those things. And so I'm just giving you the way, it's like a roadmap. This is what you do to get people bought in so that your numbers start to look more positive.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm not telling you not to look at your numbers. I don't want to demonize those who are like look at people analytics and looking at the end, whatever that's what we need to do. That's a good business work, business side of things. So one thing that I say is that I don't think I've given enough time. I mean, that's me personally. Like I'm saying to myself, yep, I realize I've been part of the problem, like to what's happened in the world. And it's, not leaning in to say that those are important. We were just, really elevating the other side, the side that most people think of as soft. And so now it's like, I'm not saying I'm swinging back to say, don't be soft. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying you can do both and you should be doing
Yes.
both. And that caring
Yes.
is the other part too. So,
Well, and the numbers, here's the thing, like the way you get to the numbers is by caring, right? But you've got to have some idea of if all of the work you're doing, and I look at them as power skills. I absolutely believe that. I think that idea of soft skills, they are without people the ability to interact effectively, all of the things, building relationships, communicating and influence, all of those things, right? Helping people feel seen and valued. Without all of that, you can't get the numbers. The only way to the other side to those numbers is through, right? So to me, you look at the numbers to understand where you are, and then you do the work, right?
Mm,
You understand where you have gaps and you do the work, which is the power skills, right? Like equipping your leaders to truly be caring leaders that do take care of themselves, right? The self-care part, all of those pieces, and the numbers will come. If you're identifying the right work, you're creating effective programs, those numbers will come, and you'll be able to measure and know that there's efficacy there. But
mhm,
there's so much money, as you know, that is spent in the people space. And that's where I think a lot of times in the people space, honestly, our industry gets a bad name because there's
mhm.
a lot of like, oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, but there's no metrics and no measurement behind it.
Yeah.
I feel super obligated to make sure that I'm looking at that so that I come to the table as a business leader first
Yep.
that cares deeply about people and what we're going to do
Mhm.
about the people needs, right?
Yep.
But I am just as obligated as any other business leader to come to the table with real numbers. But the way I do the work might look a little different because the work is different.
Mhm.
It's about
Yes,
people.
exactly.
So I just absolutely believe they can coexist. You know, it, I, I've been really happy that having those metrics in place at Americare has made it, I think, a big difference because it's empowered our leaders to understand where they stand
Mhm.
in the organization when they look year over year, and it gives them an opportunity to reflect, and as they make changes, they can see it's just like any other
Totally.
metric, right? It's just as important, if not more important, and it gives them the ability to see, am I growing as a leader? Am I taking that feedback? Am I doing something with it? Is my active listening on point? All of the things that are required to really lead. So
Mm,
it's possible, and it's powerful when it's done well. To your point, there are times that where it's not done well, and you can get that perception of leading too much with numbers. So yeah,
oh my goodness. So, folks, you heard it from Sarah. Do the work and the rest will come. It just will.
well,
Thank you for coming on here with me. Just to always, great to obviously to talk to you, but just this angle I think is a nuanced for those who've been following me for a while. And I'm hoping that more people just take this in, understanding that you can you can have all sides of you, and you don't have to just be singularly focused as it comes to our leadership. And so I just appreciate you so much for being that, balanced, pragmatic leader, the one who has both heart and practical way of looking at the business too. So thank you for that. Thanks for coming on here.
well, thank you. It's been an honor to join you and just chat with you. We could talk for, as we said before, we could talk for forever if we were allowed to. So I just really appreciate your time and getting to chat with you today.
Thank you everybody for listening to the Leadership with Heart podcast. Be well.